Hello, good evening, and welcome to your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. This is Business Focus. On this platform, we discuss everything that concerns your business and more. My name is Parkwesi Asari. Tonight, we discuss two very critical issues, our power sector as well as the very latest development on our oil find. Later on the show, we'll go for the mover segment where we tell you what young entrepreneurs are doing as they contribute to the growth of the economy, and also give you updates on the stock market as well as the commodities market, the very latest on that with Winslow Sakifiu. He'll join us with the very latest on that. But first, let's go for news making headlines in the world of business. All right, you're welcome back to Business Focus, your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. Before we zoom into our discussions this evening, let's go for some tips on taking risk as a startup business. All right, so welcome back to the show. My name is Parkwesi Asari. This is Business Focus, your most authoritative business analysis program live here on TV3. Let's start off with the oil sector. And on Thursday, February 14, 2019, the Ministry of Finance in a press release sent from Oslo, Norway, confirmed Aker Energy significant offshore resource base in Ghana, and that Aker has committed to scale up new developments in the Deepwater Tunnel Cape 3 Point block. Now, the statement also said that Aker's announcement was the biggest oil find in Africa of 450 to 550 million barrels, with potential recoverable reserves of nearly 1 billion barrels. Now, at today's oil price of $65 per barrel, that field is worth at least $30 billion. So today we ask, what are all these figures and what do they mean to our oil sector? And also we'll discuss concerns of this costing the country some $7.2 billion. My guests have joined me in the studio. I'm going to introduce you them pretty shortly. But of course, I mean, we're told by the Energy Minister, Deputy Energy Minister Mohamed Amin Adams, that this oil find is worth 500,000 barrels of oil, crude oil a day. And this is far less than what Nigeria and Angola is producing. They are producing in excess of 1 million barrels a day. So what does this mean for our country? Let me just quickly introduce my guest to you. Kojo Poku is an energy analyst. He's an energy expert and also research analyst with the Institute of Energy Securities, Migdad Mohammed. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time, and good to have you in studio. Now, ahead of this discussion, we know that Imani Ghana has raised a number of concerns over the announcement of Aker Energy having won this oil find. Now, some of the questions, and I'm just run through some of the questions Imani has been raising, for instance. Now, and I'm going to quote here. They said that it would appear we may not be exacting the maximum interest from this significant find. Now, GNPC may have sold Ghana short by allowing ACA to assume from the start that these new oil discoveries automatically fall under the existing petroleum agreement, which is erroneous. At least Ghana could have exercised its right to take up the 10% additional equity option in the ACA block. Now, the failure or refusal or negligence to do this is truly startling for a developing nation which needs to make the most of its natural resources. They raise a number of concerns, including how many discoveries were made by Hess and which discoveries were appraised and when were these appraisals appraisal periods. So they've raised a number of concerns and a number of questions they're posing to the Energy Ministry. We made attempts to reach the Energy Ministry. I spoke to the head of communications for the Energy Ministry, Nana Damwa. He says he's going to come back with to us on this. There are a number of checks that he needs to make before he can speak confidently on this matter. We also tried to speak to Franklin Kujo, who is with Imani Ghana. He, at the time we reached him, he was in a meeting and has promised to get back to us. I'll start off with Kujo Poko. Kujo, so what do you make of all this back and forth, this latest, issue Imani's raising about ACA?
Well, I don't see the point. I think Imani should come again and clarify what they are trying to say exactly. Look, in an upstream business, there is difference between carried interest, which is as per the petroleum agreement, there is a percentage in the block which government of Ghana takes, which is up to 14%, which you don't pay any contribution in that equity. So government of Ghana has 14% in the block, and all the expenditure that is accrued in the work program, government of Ghana doesn't pay anything. It is called the carried interest. Anytime you want to go above that, then you have to now pay as per your percentage. So Imani is saying that Ghana could have gone up 30%. ACA can give Ghana government another 15%. It doesn't matter. What it means is that if we are going to do a 1 billion work program, government of Ghana has to cop up $150 million, 15% of 1 billion. So it is not a carried interest. It's only when you are looking for freebies. Aside the 14 to 15%, anything else comes with payment. It's cash calls. So I don't get where ACA is trying to go. We've always known that government doesn't risk money. Sorry, Imani is trying to go. We don't encourage government to risk money. There was Esploko. A GNPC formed an arm which was going to now, anytime there's a block like this, where Ghana has the 14 to 15% carried interest, the thinking in the previous administration was that let's form Esploko, which will be an offshoot of GNPC that can also participate in the block. So Esploko, in this case, from what Imani is saying, could have taken another 15%. But what it means is that there is a cash call, and that cash call has to go through our budget, our consolidated money, the money that we have to use for hospitals, schools, education. Ghana government needs to find $150 million to go and risk. And if you go and you don't find anything, you have lost that money. So I don't encourage that. So it's better we stick to the carried interest and basically look at it going forward. But for what Imani is saying, I don't agree.
I'll come back to you on the issue of going forward and what this means to our economy. McDad, I'm sure you've also been following this matter quite strongly. What's your own position on it?
Well, I think I want to disagree strongly with my senior brother here, because I think that we don't have to just simply reduce GNPC to a collector of money from international oil companies that have come. They must participate incrementally at some point. When you look at the agreement that Imani was talking about, Esploko was supposed to take up 10% when they did their data room farm out. They were farming down, actually. They were holding on to 50% and then farming down 40%, which got Lukoil taking 38%, and then the GNPC's Esploko was taking 10%, and for which government of Ghana in the 2016 budget made provisions for $47 million for them to take up that participating interest. What happened was that because of the 8 loss ruling, the 69% of the block was approximately under contention. So they chose to hold on until that was exhausted before they will make the payments. But eventually in 2017, when the ruling came, ACA acquired the 10% back, leaving Exploko with 0, and GMPC holding its old 10%.
Mind you, this is a
and then
block
Forward Trade holding
initially held by Hess.
Yes, I mean when you do a data room, Hess has done the exploration. They have got the data. They want to sell off some stakes in there. They hold 90%. GMPC holds 10%, and then they say, okay, now here is the data we have. We have got our 2D, 3D data, seismic data is here. It shows that the possibility of getting this amount of oil exists. If you look at the data and you are convinced, you can take up some percentage. Lukoil came in, took 38%. Forward Trade took 2%, and then GMPC's 10% was still there. And the incorporated subsidiary of GMPC, which is the Exploko, GMPC Exploko, was supposed to take up 10% of Hess Energy. But because of I don't know what went into the scene with the change of government and whatever happens, then now it emerges that Hess is still holding on to its 50% when it should have been holding 40% if we have exercised that right. And then we woke up to the news that there has been a discovery after the 7 wells that Hess drilled, the 2 gas and the 5 petroleum. Right. And when you say you have made extra discoveries, now you have exploration. We have a prospecting license, which lasts for 7 years, which you got from 2007 and ended in 18th July 2013. So it means beyond that, you were still doing some work. Right. And when you discovered the oil, will that discovery be covered by the petroleum agreement or the exploration license, which was given to you between 2007 and 2013? Obviously, these are the questions Imani raised. And I think that they did not present it as sacrosanct. They presented it as seeking further and more clarity from the people in the sector. And we are grateful that the Right to Information Bill has been passed. Some of these things are the things that we in civil society will have the opportunity of scrutinizing and policing the process, so that it doesn't become the work of some big men in some big room deciding on behalf of the people of Ghana without, sometimes, some T's may have to be crossed or some I's may have to be dotted. And to take some voices like Mr. Kojo Poku here and us and Imani and IES and ASEP to be able to raise some questions. That is how we have come this far. So for me, I think that it is not out of place for questions to be raised about the participating interest of GMPC. Yes, it is not just money they're throwing away, it's a risk. And they are not acquiring 50% of the block, which will require them to be the majority investors. They are just carrying some 10%, a risk. You invest where discoveries have been made and you finish your appraisal, you see commerciality big enough, you cough in the money, whether you are getting support from wherever, eventually you could make something or you could lose. That is how it's supposed to be. And that is how the companies we look up to abroad, the multinationals in Brazil and that's how they began. You don't begin by going for the big cake. I mean, you're a small player. That is why also I think in the wisdom of the people who chose to create Exploko, made it a subsidiary of GMPC. So GMPC holds its 10%, Exploko on its own holds another 10% participating interest, and we can make some progress. So maybe
I will explain. Okay, let me explain a few bits about what he just said. Look, when you have a 7-year exploration petroleum agreement, which is for exploration period, and you've made some discoveries, you can be given an extension. So clearly what happened in this case was that the petroleum agreement that existed, the company, but you can be extended. So there was an extension given. Okay, within that extension is only when the discoveries, then you cannot go to a different negotiation for a developmental agreement. So the development and production agreement is different from exploration agreement. So now that they are still doing appraisals on the existing wells,
they are done with the appraisals.
No, Hess didn't do appraisals. Hess only, that's why the volumetrics...
No, ACA is done with the appraisals.
No, what I'm saying is
and they have submitted a plan of development for this. For the world.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that you are saying that you are asking questions about what are they still...
Imani is asking questions.
Imani is asking questions about are they still in the PA which existed? And I'm trying to give clarity to that the petroleum agreement that existed was for exploration. Appraisals are still exploration. It's after you have done your appraisals and you now have your developmental and production arrangement, then you now sign a developmental and production agreement. So whatever ACA is doing now is still under the old Aker exploration
You
agreement.
see, in exploration, you have 7 years.
No, but it can be extended. There's nothing that says that the minister can extend it. It can be extended. They extend it all the time. So what I'm saying is that if a company has made discoveries, they exit, a new company comes in, it was extended. So I'm trying to give clarity to what you asked. Imani is saying that, was it done under the old exploration agreement of 7 years? And I'm saying yes, because the exploration agreement of 7 years, the minister is given the right to extend it. So it was extended. There are only two types of agreements in upstream. It's either an exploration agreement or a developmental and production agreement. So when you're doing appraisal, it is under the exploration agreement. So let's put that to rest. Look, nobody has the single thought on what should happen. The name of the game is that you either risk money to make money. Private companies can risk money to make money. As a country, we have to ask ourselves, are we prepared to let the government of Ghana, through a subsidiary, which is Exploko, which is still owned 100% by Ghana, to be risking Ghanaians' limited resources? In the past, we had the issue of the GMPC risking buying rigs and all that.
And we know what happened.
So the question is, nobody is saying that the extra percentages cannot be acquired. But the explanation that I am bringing to the fore, and he's confirmed it, that if you seek to take more, it comes with a risk. Unlike, so you separate the conversation. Let's not make it look like we could have gotten 30 and we took 14. It's not the same. The 14 is given to you as a government. You are carried and you don't pay anything.
Right.
If you seek to take more, it comes with a risk. So when Imani lump it like that, oh, we could have taken this and made such amount of money. No, it's not. What you could have made comes with a risk. So that's the explanation I want to give.
Right, that's fair. So we're told there's a second. You want to say something before?
Yes, I wanted to make the point that where you have an interest, I mean, 35% of zero is zero. So where you risk and make the investments and you make returns. For example, if Exploko had the 10% in this Hess Energy, what would have been the stake of GMPC Exploko in this new discovery?
But you would have spent,
you would have spent, but you would have made money.
Hold on.
The argument,
let me explain.
Are you willing as a country to take that risk?
Before they made the discovery, before they did appraisal, there was a work program. Let's say the work program is 100 million. If you have 10%, it means what? It's $10 million.
Right.
You have to cough up $10 million towards that work program before, when the results of the 1 billion that we are talking about comes up.
So what
That's
will be
when you enjoy. So as a country,
what then will be the problem in Ghana? Seeing, because before Hess Energy handed over the well to Aker, the commerciality appraisal of the well was
Hess hand over to GMPC to hand over to Aker or Hess?
Hess held 90%.
Right.
They did their data room farm down and then gave out 38 to Lukoil, 2% to Forward Trade.
Okay.
That is when Exploko of GMPC was supposed to take 10%.
Okay.
But it didn't happen. And I've made reference to the fact that the 2016 budget had $47 million for that participating interest.
But the question is,
so as to the argument he will make that it will not make economic sense for the government of Ghana to make that investment, knowing that the seismic data you extracted was positive.
No, but do we
because
have
you think Aker Energy will acquire for $100 million that will, if the data room they assessed was not positive.
So are we saying that Aker
we must
benefited from data?
They are private companies that have faced difficulties and collapsed. I am not one of the people who believe that the states must just keep holding on to taking royalties from our oil and gas sector. So yes, we have had examples.
It's getting
but
heated here.
10%,
hold on, guys.
10% of 100% for GMPC.
We'll come back to this. Let's go to Parliament. The Chief Executive Officer of the Petroleum Commission, Edward Fable Jr., has been speaking about this latest deal. He was in Parliament today. Let's hear what he had to say, and then we'll come back in studio to tie up the loose ends.
Prevent, or let's say make it difficult for expatriates to come in, or we grow Ghanaians alongside. What we've also done is that lately, if you may have heard, one of the initiatives of His Excellency the President is the Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Program, where the Petroleum Commission has been tasked to ensure that Ghanaians are trained to take up such roles in the upstream space. We've sourced $4.5 million United States from Aker Energy, And indeed, that program is going to be rolled out. Over 1,000 plus Ghanaians are going to be trained to be unleashed onto the industry. So I just want to assure you that the Petroleum Commission is doing all that is necessary on a daily basis to ensure that Ghanaians take their rightful places in the upstream oil space. The Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Program has just been operationalized because we just got the necessary funding. But with respect to initiatives like an internship program known as GASIP and also the database, last year at least over 120 Ghanaians were placed in such roles.
Chief Executive Officer of the Petroleum Commission, the Acting Chief Executive Officer Egbert Fable Jr. Addressing Parliament on this ACA deal and what they intend to do for the people of this country. So we're told that this will give us in excess of, have a million barrels of crude oil a day. What does this mean for Ghana in the economy?
Well, it means that we are inching closer to be recognized as a serious company when it comes to oil and as a serious country when it comes to oil and gas. It also means that we would now have a lot of companies coming in to explore for more. I remember as far back as 2002 when we first went to Houston for a conference and we had a CAD, gas up oil exploration company from Ghana. People look at you and thinking, Ghana, do you guys have oil? That's 2002. Now it's different. People go to Houston and go to all these conferences and they're excited to be there because Ghana is known. So these big discoveries is welcome. You understand? It will put us. But for me, my concern is not whether Ghanaian money should be put into risking. For I think the petroleum work program. Back to the issue. No, I'm the work program.
And I always disagree.
The work program that is to be done. We should concentrate more and sit with the oil companies on the work program because these discoveries have a lifespan. You realize that it's 7 to 10 years on most wells.
Right.
So if they front load the expenditure for the work program, which is about, let's say, 2 billion or 3 billion, because maybe 1.5 is for an FPSO, and this is for that. You realize that we need to pay off all those money that has been borrowed before a proper sharing equation is done.
Right.
So the most important thing is not government to get excited about the volumetrics that we've gotten, but to look at the expenditure, the front-end expenditure.
What goes into it.
What goes into it, and basically streamline, because the quicker we are able to pay off some of these loans that we contract, the better for us to be able to, as Ghanaians, get better benefits.
Well, we can discover billions of oils a day in this country, but when the laws we have made to govern our exploration, whatever, even the management of revenue is not respected by the people who are entrusted with the duty to manage the resources, it will come to naught. We'll come and discuss the discovery of oil and we'll go to conferences in whichever part of the country and be recognized as a player, but the people for whom the resources were discovered will continue to live in misery because we don't make laws. If we make laws and say we have this duration and people, for whatever reason, whatever interests are at stake, end up downplaying or watering down the role of the country in the whole transaction, it raises a lot of questions. And I think I agree fully with Imani. If in the next 20 years we are drilling 1 million barrels a day and we have a GMPC that has reduced to a beggar in a transaction, that takes only the share that they have because of they being a Ghanaian company, then we are not serious as a country. Yes, we may have had the examples of the drill ships and the Chachus era with the acquisitions they made that were not productive, but times have changed. If we are a country that picks lessons from the past, we should be able to see GMPC playing roles that Sinopec, for example, is playing in some in the context of our sub-region and all. We can't beat our chest and say we want to be petroleum hub and those fanciful words the politicians throw about. And then when it comes to empowering GMPC, when it comes to establishing a clear path of growth for GMPC to be able to not only just go collect royalties, but to be able to participate with a minimum level of risk, then we create excuses for it. It cannot work.
Kojo, this is still far less than what Nigeria is producing in a day. I mean, beyond just exporting in its raw form, what can we do as a country?
Well, the petroleum hub, which has been talked of in the Western region, is one step. Some of us are advocating for stopping of the FPSO developmental plan.
Why so?
Because FPSOs does not help us develop the industry we want. What FPSO does is that it basically sits right next to where the well is, takes the oil and ships it out. What we should do is do an ocean floor study, do pipelines of all the wells and pipe it onto a storage onshore. When you have that, then you have a terminal where ships will come and load the crude off. You can have a refinery that can now sit behind or close to this storage facility and pipe crude oil to it. From the refinery, you can have petrochemical industries come up, and we've talked
about this. And how soon do you see this refinery coming up?
Well, I don't know about the refinery, but my point is the first step is to have the piping of our crude to the shore. When you do that, you see, we keep talking about the refinery, but the most important things have not been done. Even the ocean floor studies have not been done.
So it takes a long...
It's a process. And you see, it will get to a time, if we don't make such big discoveries, and we make smaller discoveries, it will be difficult to develop it, because then you now have to look at tying that into existing FPSOs, because you remember there's Jubilee 1, Jubilee 2. Jubilee 1 has an FPSO. When they found Jubilee 2, they didn't have enough volumetrics in Jubilee 2, so they tied it into Jubilee 1 FPSO. There will be a time when you do not make enough discovery for a well to be able to now go a full-blown developmental arrangement like having an FPSO that costs 1.5 billion or whatever. But if we're able to tie in all these small wells into one pipeline, then smaller wells can also be tied into the storage that we have onshore. When you're able to do that, then the refinery conversation can come after.
Rita, let me take your own thoughts on that, and then we'll move on to Ghana Gas supplying gas to VRA.
Well, clearly I agree with him about this FPSOization of our industry.
You think it's a non-starter?
I think it's capital intensive, and the returns have not been as quick as it should be. And in some cases, like you referred to, it was something that IES was looking at, how you make discoveries and where you are not able to get FPSOs to take over, you have to pipe it all the way. And where you have commerciality questions, you are not very certain about the level of investment that will be needed. You may waste money to do piping that you may not get the level of resources that you anticipate. So, well, I've also followed the discussion on this petroleum hub thing. I mean, for me, I see it as simply one of the talks of the politicians until we see clear lines towards it. The question of TOR's existence has not been addressed, whether they are going to bring in a private equity into TOR, whether government is going to guarantee TOR to get stock. We have just pushed aside.
No, but like Kojo is saying, there are processes we need to go through before we have to set up a refinery.
There are a lot of processes indeed, but if you have not addressed your premier refinery, the number one refinery, it is currently facing some challenges with feedstock, and this is because it has bad books. So as to whether government is guaranteeing for them to get feedstock from Equatorial Guinea or from Nigeria, or they are getting them private capital with TOR's infrastructure, their CDU and RFCC as equity for them to be able to be on their feet, or they are just, as the former energy minister said, they were making it a tank farm. These are ideas that have been floated by various players within the energy sector in this government, and you don't see policy coherence.
Kojo, what would it mean to have a well-stationed, well-functioning refinery?
Liquidity, money. You see, there's a lot of talk and less action, and you need the actions before anybody can be very sure of what's going to happen. Like the instance of TOR, as my brother have mentioned, there are various ways that TOR can be made to function. The main decision lies with the shareholder, which is government, and government has to make a very decisive decision on what they want to do. I mean, most people think that TOR is to do with feedstock. It's not about feedstock. Feedstock is about you have to pay for it. We have our own crude, which GNPC manages. GNPC can give our crude to TOR. The only difference is that in 30 days, somebody has to put the money in the account which the government has, the parliament have said that, look, if our crude is sold in 30 days, they have to go into this account. So the issue of stock is not the problem. The feedstock is there. GNPC can give it, Nigeria can give it, Equatorial Guinea can give it. But within 30 days, somebody has to pay for it. And those are the decisions that needs to be made by the majority shareholder, which is government.
Right. Let's quickly talk about the Ghana Gas. having begun to supply gas to VRA. Good news for us?
Yeah, very good news. I think as the media don't talk a lot about when there are good news. I think mostly it's when there's crisis and everybody comes to talk. Had some tough times in the month of March. Some of us are very hopeful that in April, now that the reverse flow is done, companies that are in Tema can now get the needed gas to power. The liquidity problem still exists, but it's getting better. You know, so there are challenges in the system, but I don't think that Ghanaians should be rest assured that we've basically moved away from the challenges in March. There are some problems here and there. You have a few outages every now and then, but I think we've come out of the woods.
Migdad, exciting times for us?
Yes, the meaning of all of this for any average Ghanaian is that you should be able to have stable electricity. The average Ghanaian will not care whether the gas came from the West African gas pipeline or it came from Jubilee or 10. What the average Ghanaian wants to see is that when he puts on his light, it is on. And this is a positive development. And it's one of the things that I commend TV3 often for. You have specialized journalists who are more into a particular field and they immerse themselves in it. But largely because the media landscape is more of general news reporting, you don't get the specificity that is required when some of these news come up. So I think it is a positive development, and like Senior Kojo Poku said, we've not come out of the woods yet. We at IES are not prophets of doom. That's not doom, so prophets of doom we are not. We have seen instances where the Energy Ministry, whether it is Mr. Mewo or Deputy in charge of power, have come to make assurances when these news are not out yet. And those assurances have been empty. Instead of their assurances, it's such news that should be making the airwaves. So when Ghanaians are informed that this amount of gas has moved from Ghana Gas to VRA, it means something. Instead of the minister or his deputy organizing meet the presses and clapping for themselves for solving doomsday and the challenges in the energy sector, when Ghanaians will sleep and wake up in darkness.
All right, okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. Thanks for having you in the studio. Kojo Poku is an energy analyst. Migdad is with the Institute of Energy Security. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. We'll take a short break. When we return, I'll tell you about this young Ghanaian shoemaker whose passion to make shoes stems from his love to care for the needy. We'll take a short break. We'll return with that on our Mover segment for tonight.
His mother was passionate about charity and touching lives. Unfortunately, she didn't live too long to touch more lives. This was the starting point for the Warm Their Feet shoe brand. I visited the production house for the full story.
The whole intention is to make and sell shoes and then use the proceeds to impact society. That's what drove Warm Their Feet.
33-year-old Noel Nchuga needed to raise money to continue his mother's charitable works whilst meeting demands in the shoe and fashion supply chain. As usual, financial challenges are prominent. They have become the main bane of many businesses in Ghana, especially the startups.
As expected, the starting point of every business is very, very difficult. We have to fall on families, we have to fall on friends, we have to fall on even some financial institutions for loans and so on. As we speak, we are still repaying some of the loans, except that things are looking positive for us. And I must say that very soon, all of these debts will be off, and then we'll be able to focus more attention on our social entrepreneurship.
Again, another challenge is having to do with high import duties. With a fluctuating currency, the price for the soles for the shoes is not stable on the market, and that affects the business.
The import duties are so huge that there seems to be no strategy or whatsoever for startup businesses, and it's killing us. It makes our prices look outrageous to some people, to so many people. A lot of people would have to see the quality before they feel, okay, the quality matches the sort of price. Otherwise, on the face value, people don't want to do business with you.
But the line to succeed had been drawn, and there was no turning back. warmed their feet, began production, and the first batch of desert shoes were produced. From a business that started with making only 14 pairs of shoes, the brand is now able to produce over 400 or more in a month, depending on the demand. He's not only producing desert shoes, but has also introduced a new line of quality leather sandals for men and children. This is in line with the charitable aspect of their project.
Our charity has focused on education sector. This year, for example, we are going to donate about 100 shoes to lots of communities where we have brilliant but needy children, of school-going ages who cannot afford a pair to wear. So we are going to, that's our major project for 2019.
For him, the SME sector in Ghana has a lot of potential and must be supported with adequate funds.
The government ought to deliberately create a strategy that seeks to empower local industries, that seeks to empower startup businesses like us. So for example, if you have some sort of waiver for startup businesses, that should be a plus for us. We'll have a lot of things going on well for us if we can save some more.
Until the needed support is received, determination and willpower will always be key.
At some point, it was difficult, but I'm someone who's been trained to resist some of these tough times. For me, giving up is just too late. I mean, I've gone too far to give up on anything it was that I was doing. So yes, those tendencies will come up, but I have resisted them and we have moved the brand to where we are now.
Noel encouraged young entrepreneurs to be innovative and take advantage of the various social media avenues to exhibit their products. This is what he has for upcoming entrepreneurs.
If I was a loner on this journey, it would have been so difficult. So I would advise that they discuss ideas with people they trust. They should be willing to take on partnership. Sometimes people are so reluctant to entertain the idea of partnership because of the share of profit. You know, and I always say that it is better if you get 50% of 100,000 Ghana cedis. It is better than getting 100% of 10,000 Ghana cedis, right? So once you have a joint force, there are brilliant ideas that will come on board. You can dwell on to make greater things.
The SME sector is a big one that has space for everyone to operate. The Warm Their Feet brand has come to stay, and it is ready to bridge that gap in the shoe supply chain. For the Mover segment on Business Focus on TV3, Grace Hamwa Asare, Accra.
Thank you very much, Grace Hamwa Asare, for that one on the Mover segment this week. You're still watching Business Focus, your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll do the very latest analysis on the stock market as well as the commodities market. Winslow Sakifiu will join me for some analysis on this. Welcome back to Business Focus, your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. Let's do some stock market analysis. Winslow Sakifiu is with First Bank Financial Services. Winslow, last week you told us about an unusual trade-off, or if you like, sell-off in shares. I don't know if that has changed today.
It hasn't changed. We are still witnessing more sell-off, but this time it's related to the performance of the equities themselves. So we had ADB end of year, the performance wasn't that good. There was a sharp decline.
What accounted for that?
I was mainly on the back of non-performing loans, and they didn't really do a lot of lending in last year. You know, most of the banks were having a wait-and-see attitude,
right.
And it was also due to the minimum capital issue. So most of them didn't do much business.
And that impacted on their stock market performance?
Yes, and this is one of the few times that you could see non-performance from the company itself being reflected in the stock prices.
Market,
yes.
Right.
So there is some kind of efficiency in there. But we've also seen some of the big banks also doing well. So it's more mixed now. The smaller ones are not doing so well. The big ones are leveraging on their size.
So what are we to expect in the coming week?
It's difficult to know when the bottom would happen, but it's likely this second quarter we won't see much significant positive performance on the market. Maybe in the third quarter when we see first quarter results, I think businesses...
So what would be your advice to investors at this time, local investors?
Local investors, it's good to get in now because the stock prices are very low, so you get them very cheap, and any upside would give you significant return.
I see. Interesting. Let's talk about the commodities market now. Let's start off with gold. What's it looking like?
Gold inched up very slightly, and it was because of demand from India. You know, they use a lot of gold in their weddings and all that. And the rupee strengthened a bit, so they took advantage to buy more gold. But that didn't push the price up very much because in China, the demand wasn't that much. China is one of the highest domestic consumers. So for gold, there was a slight increase. What we saw a significant move is crude prices. You know, now we are in the 70 zone, and it looks like even high U.S. stockpile didn't bring the price down because there was a high demand. OPEC has indicated that they would increase production in June, but June is a bit far off, so we'll see prices still going up gradually. For cocoa, I think rain pattern in the cocoa growing areas have been very good. So we expect the yield to increase, and that is bringing the price down.
Right. Okay, thank you very much, Winslow, for your time. And hopefully next week we'll see you for some more analysis, and we'll find out particularly how the stock market is faring. Thanks also for watching. This has been Business Focus, your most authoritative business and economic analysis program live here on TV3. God willing, same time next week we'll be here again with another edition of your show. There's a repeat on Thursday. We'll stand by now for the news at 7 with Alfred and Natalie. Thanks very much for watching.